Hi everyone, it's Laura here for Studio Katia, and in today's video I will show you how to create a friendship card using the You're So Ranunculus stamp set and coordinating dies and the Studio Katia Chunky Confetti Glitter. To start off my card, I stamped the image from the You're So Ranunculus stamp set on some Canson XL watercolored cardstock using some waterproof black ink, and I started doing some watercoloring with distress inks. I picked worn lipstick, dried marigold and mustard seeds, and I will be using the wet on wet technique. So to get some ink out, I will press the ink pads on my glass mat. And then I will lay down a first coat of clean clear water in the areas I want to paint, and only after that I will add pigment in the shadow areas and let them move because of the water that's already on the paper. I will be a little bit more careful and a little bit more precise in terms of where I lay down the pigment for this large flower on the bottom and for the larger petals on the other flowers. But for the areas towards the centers of the flowers, where there is a lot of detail in the drawing, I will simply add some water and drop pigment here and there. And this is what I'm doing right now, and the reason why I can get away with it is that this image is so beautifully drawn and so full of details that I don't really need to add much to it and I will still get a very pretty result. I went ahead and painted all the flowers, and once the first layer was dry, I added a second layer of color. So I am now adding ripe persimmon to the flowers that I had painted in orange, so originally with dried marigold. For the yellow flowers that I had painted with mustard seed, I am adding a second layer of dried marigold, so adding a little bit of orange to those. And finally, for the pink flowers that I had painted with worn lipstick, I am using mustard seed. And as you can see, I am not really using any specific technique. I am being very loose in my watercoloring, and the reason why I am adding the second layer of color is to get a little bit of interest and variation to my piece. I am using crushed olive and mauve lawn to quickly add some color to the stems of the flowers. I will then wait for the cardstock to completely dry and I'll move on to the next step, which consists of adding more texture and shading with my Prismacolor pencils. I picked colors that matched the colors of my flowers and used some flicking motions to add some line detail and depth to the petals. And as I did for the watercoloring, I am being a little bit more careful and a little bit more precise when I'm adding detail to the larger petals, and a little bit more loose when I am adding shading to these already very detailed center areas of the flowers. I am basically taking advantage of the richness of this illustration to get away with some faster coloring. So I am using 2 shades per color for each of the flowers, and I will list the Prismacolor pencils that I used in the blog post that you will find linked in the description box down below. Once I was done coloring, I die cut the stamped image with the coordinating dies to the You're So Ranunculus stamp set by Studio Katia and moved on to my background. For that, I used the Darling Ribbon Creative dies to cut some more Canson XL watercolored cardstock to an A2 size, and I added some splatters with the same distressing colors that I used on my background. So I used worn lipstick, dried marigold, ripe persimmon and mustard seed. For continuity, I decided to add some splatters to the image too, and I'm using a smaller brush so that I get a little bit more control and I don't risk ruining my colored images. And in order to add more contrast and to tie in the stamped outline, I also added some black splatters with Distress Inking Blood Soot, both on the image and on my background panel. I left the inks to dry and then I used one of the dies in the Scallop window creative die set to cut an opening on this panel so that I could create a window. And for the background of this window, I have another piece of Canson XL watercolor cardstock, which I taped onto my glass mat, and I am now adding 3 strips of strong double-sided adhesive. I am peeling off the backing sheets and I will cover the panel with Studio Katia Chunky Confetti Glitter. I am then going to top off the excess, funnel it back into its jar, and then I will use my score tool to press the glitter down onto the double-sided adhesive, making sure that it's nicely stuck down. For my sentiment, I used this super pretty scripty hello die, which comes in the coordinating dies to the You're So Ranunculus stamp set, and I used it to cut some black cardstock using my Sidekick machine. I then moved on and started assembling my card. I started by backing my front panel using some acetate and double-sided adhesive. I then coated the back of this panel with one layer of foam tape and adhered it on top of my window background. I used some liquid glue to cover the back of my stamped image and then I glued it down to the left side of my card front, and I'm using a heavy acrylic block, this is by Studio Katia as well, to keep it in place. I used the same liquid adhesive to adhere this hello die cut to the bottom right of my card front, overlapping it slightly with one of the flowers. And then for some finishing details, I decided to add these beautiful onyx crystals by Studio Katia to the bottom left and to the top right of my card. I decided to quickly decorate the inside of the card, so I stamped the main floral image using Distress Oxide in Worn Lipstick and also one of the sentiments in the same stamp set using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I adhered the card front to the card base with some double-sided adhesive, and here is a look at the finished card and at all the fun sparkle brought by the glitter. And that's it for today. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and I hope I inspired you to create with the gorgeous You're So Ranunculus stamp set by Studio Katia. Don't forget to subscribe to the Studio Katia channel for more inspiration. Thank you all so much for stopping by and have a great day.